And that final look does here forgive the wolf. Hello and welcome. Welcome to the stream about werewolves. I am Poetic Heretic, and I'll be your host as we study this intense, ominous subject of the paranormal. So if you are new to my streams, welcome. I need just a minute or two to get set up, but I will make some preliminary remarks as usual as I do get set up. One moment. Perfect. Audio quality is good. I don't know why this shit is going slow, but whatever. Here, I better charge my phone. Okay, there we go. So yes, we will be studying the subject of werewolves tonight. How delicious. Something a little bit different from most of the stuff that I've been doing, that I've been looking into recently. Just got to get this set up on Twitter real quick. I decided to do a live stream studying subjects, actually we'll just say on werewolves. Yes, because earlier tonight, I just tweeted this not long ago, I couldn't decide what I wanted to do tonight. I wasn't sure if I should go live or if I should, I don't know, do one of the various other things, various other options available to me. But eventually I decided that going live with a stream about werewolves was the most exciting thing I could think of possibly doing. And so here I am. Okay, let me just make sure that tweet looks good. All right, cool. So this isn't, as usual, something that's just purely entertainment, but not purely educational either, I suppose. Take from it whatever you want. I think of these kinds of streams as just as much educational as entertainment value. So yes, we'll be doing what we normally do with these kinds of streams. We'll be taking the subject, we'll be looking up information about it on the internet, and anything that I think looks interesting, I will read and analyze, and hopefully people will come in and comment, and then we can have like a bit of a discussion or conversation and see where that goes, see what all we can uncover. To start this out with, though, I'm going to tell you guys a little story, okay? And I don't think I've ever told anyone this. If I have, I don't remember. So, also gives me an opportunity to, I don't know, gain a little catharsis perhaps. But anyway, a long time ago, I was talking to someone on the phone that I didn't end up knowing for very long after this, fortunately. But I was talking to him, and it was actually, I think, when I was working on my video on this very channel called Real Werewolves. If you want to see what I was like back then, maybe you can check that out after this stream. I think that was it anyway. But whatever it was, it had to do with werewolves. And so I mentioned that. And this guy, I don't know what his problem was, but But he like almost went off on a tangent or something, and he's like, blah blah blah, just because you believe in vampires and werewolves and blah blah blah. And I'm thinking, okay, first of all, I didn't say a goddamn thing about vampires. Like, where are you getting that from? Second of all, I never said that I believe in werewolves, for fuck's sakes, just because I'm doing a video about them. How does that automatically translate to I believe in them? And so that's the point that I'm wanting to make with this and begin this stream by, is to say, if anyone is wondering, for the record, no, I do not believe in werewolves. I do not, I shouldn't even have to say that, I feel like, but I do not believe that werewolves are a factual thing that exists. I believe that they are purely fictional. However, I will say that I've heard some things over the years and I've read some things over the years that do make me wonder, but they make me wonder. That does not mean anything more than that. You know, I'm pretty damn sure that werewolves are complete fiction. Now, if you want to talk about rare canine creatures that are not actual transforming, shape-shifting werewolves, but actually rare canine creatures that some people claim to have witnessed, that are more commonly called dogmen or like wolfman or whatever, that's actually surprisingly more plausible than it sounds. So that one, you might have me there. I do think, after all the eyewitness testimony I've heard and all the, I don't know, articles I've read, stories I've read, that dogmen most likely are a real phenomena. I know that sounds crazy to say. I've said this before on other streams, though, and not to mention that I've talked to two people in person who swear that they saw one of these things. So that I do believe in. But you see, that's a lot more plausible than actual werewolves, because that could just be a very rare type of canine animal that has not been officially discovered yet. That's far more plausible than actual shape-shifting canines that we call werewolves. So I hope that makes sense. Anyway, let's continue. Hello there, Haley. Welcome to this stream. It's a late night stream, so yes. Anyway, with all that out of the way, let's get on with diving into the subject of werewolves. Werewolves. I will say, though, interestingly enough, so I may not believe that werewolves are a real thing, but there are some people out there, believe it or not, there are some people out there that claim to have had experiences with actual shape-shifting werewolves. So make of that what you will, but there are people out there like that. All right. So as usual, as I said, we're just going to do some internet searches, and let's just start with the Wikipedia article on werewolf. Seems like a good place to start. Then we'll go from there. All right. In folklore, a werewolf, Old English werewolf, man-wolf, it's WERWULF, or occasionally lycanthrope. And it gives the Greek, which I don't know how to explain that, but lycanthropos or something, I guess meaning literally wolf person, if I'm reading this correctly, is a human with the ability to shapeshift into a wolf, or, especially in modern film, a therianthropic hybrid wolf-like creature, either purposely or after being placed under a curse or affliction, often a bite or scratch from another werewolf, and especially on the night of a full moon. Early sources for belief in this ability or affliction, called lycanthropy, are Petronius, 27 through 66, and Gervase of Tilbury, 1150 to 1228. Yes, these ancient legends. The werewolf is a widespread concept in European folklore, existing in many variants, which are related by a common development of a Christian interpretation of underlying European folklore developed during the medieval period. From the early modern period, werewolf beliefs also spread to the New World with colonialism. Belief in werewolves developed in parallel to the belief in witches in the course of the late Middle Ages and the early modern period. Like the witchcraft trials as a whole, the trial of supposed werewolves emerged in what is now Switzerland, especially the Valais and Vaud. I apologize for probably not pronouncing that correctly. In the early 15th century and spread throughout Europe in the 16th, peaking in the 17th and subsiding by the 18th century. The persecution of werewolves and the associated folklore is an integral part of the quote-unquote witch hunt phenomenon, albeit a marginal one, accusations of lycanthropy being involved in only a small fraction of witchcraft trials. During the early period, accusations of lycanthropy, transformation into a wolf, were mixed with accusations of wolf riding or wolf charming. Ooh, wolf charming. The case of Peter Stump, 1589, led to a significant peak in both interest in and persecution of supposed werewolves, primarily in French-speaking and German-speaking Europe. The phenomenon persisted longest in Bavaria and Austria, with persecution of wolf charmers recorded until well after 1650, the final cases taking place in the early 18th century in Carinthia and Styria. After the end of the witch trials, the werewolf became of interest in folklore studies and the emerging Gothic horror genre. Werewolf fiction as a genre has pre-modern precedents in medieval romances, e.g. Bisclaveret and Guillaume de Palerme. Again, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And developed in the 18th century out of the semi-fictional chapbook tradition. The trappings of horror literature in the 20th century became part of the horror and fantasy genre of modern popular culture. Kind of funny reading that, as I literally have Underworld Awakening on Blu-ray on its way to me as I speak, sitting here, which is a weird sort of coincidence that I did not plan, but I seriously have that on its way to me. I did not realize that werewolves went back so far. Yeah, they do. They really, really do. I think I covered this at another point on my channel quite a few years ago. I can't remember when or what video, but yeah, like stuff in like the Middle Ages and whatnot. So it's very interesting. Another interesting thing to remember about werewolves, as I say about things as always, is that even if they are purely fictional creatures, which I'm sure they are, since all reality is psychological, there is something about the werewolf that is a reflection of an aspect of all of us. And we can learn a lot about ourselves by studying these things. Hope there isn't a freaking flea on me. Oh, God. There's a minor flea infestation here, so I apologize for that. But anyway, names. Lycanthropy, loup-garou, werewolf. The word werewolf continues a late Old English werewolf, a compound of were, man, and wolf. Wolf. That's W-U-L-F in this Old English word. The only Old High German testimony is in the form of a given name, Werejuf, although in early Middle High German, Werwolf, that's werewolf without the E, basically, without the second E, is found in Burchard of Worms and Berthold of Regensburg. The word or concept does not occur in medieval German poetry or fiction, gaining popularity only from the 15th century. Middle Latin, Gerolfus, Anglo-Norman, Garwolf, Old Frankish, Werewolf. Jeez. Old Norse had the cognate Varulfor, but because of the high importance of werewolves in Norse mythology, there were alternative terms such as, wow, I do not know how to say that, but apparently it means one in wolf skin, referring still to the totemistic or cultic adoption of wolf nature rather than the superstitious belief in actual shapeshifting. In modern Scandinavian, also Kveldulf, evening wolf, presumably after the name of Kveldulf Bjalfason, a historical berserker in the 9th century who figures in the Icelandic sagas. Sounds like something out of Skyrim. The term lycanthropy, referring both to the ability to transform oneself into a wolf and to the act of doing so, comes from ancient Greek. Don't know how to say that. The word does occur in ancient Greek sources, but only in late antiquity, only rarely, and only in the context of clinical lycanthropy described by Galen, where the patient had the ravenous appetite and other qualities of a wolf. The Greek word attains some currency only in Byzantine Greek, featuring in the 10th century encyclopedia Suda. I don't know if we need all this information on the background of the word. Let's just skip to history. Kind of reminds me, speaking of Skyrim, I was listening to Dogman Encounters Radio recently, like a few weeks ago or something, which I highly recommend if you're fascinated by werewolves and stuff like that. And this one witness, he was talking about how the dogman that he saw or claimed to see, and he also claimed that he saw it with a group of friends, the way he described it was literally like something you would see out of Skyrim. Funny enough, he used that as the descriptive word or the means of description. He was like, it was like being in a fantasy world, which I can imagine it would be. But again, dogman, werewolf, not technically the same thing. Indo-European comparative mythology. The werewolf folklore found in Europe harks back to a common development during the Middle Ages, arising in the context of Christianization and the associated interpretation of pre-Christian mythology in Christian terms. Their underlying common origin can be traced back to Proto-Indo-European mythology, where lycanthropy is reconstructed as an aspect of the initiation of the warrior class. This is reflected in Iron Age Europe in the Tierkrieger depictions from the Germanic sphere, among others. The standard comparative overview of this aspect of Indo-European mythology is McCone, 1987. Such transformations of men into wolves in pagan cult were associated with the devil from the early medieval perspective. Love Dogman Encounters with Vic. I watch it every Friday. Oh, very cool. Yeah, it's a good show. I don't catch every episode, but that's some good stuff. I really like listening to the what the hell was it called? Like 3 hours of intense Dogman encounters or something like that. I forget what the video was called, but he put up like a 3-hour one, and wow, that had some good stuff in it, especially the last story in that. Last night was really good. I have to check that out. I saw that he uploaded. I just, I'm always so doing one thing after another. But it looked particularly interesting. It was like over 2 hours long, I think. I'm like, wow, that's a long episode. I'll have to check that out sometime. The concept of the werewolf in Western and Northern Europe is strongly influenced by the role of the wolf in Germanic paganism, e.g., the French loup-garou is ultimately a loan from the Germanic term. But there are related traditions in other parts of Europe which were not necessarily influenced by Germanic tradition, especially in Slavic Europe and the Balkans, and possibly in areas bordering the Indo-European sphere, the Caucasus, or where Indo-European cultures have been replaced by military conquest in the medieval era, Hungary, Anatolia. Wikipedia is saying clarification needed there. All right. In his Man into Wolf, 1948, Robert Eisler tried to cast the Indo-European tribal names meaning wolf or wolfmen in terms of, quote, the European transition from fruit gathering to predatory hunting, end quote. And again, it says clarification needed. All right, let's see. How much longer is this next section? All right, let's start diving into it. My intention is to skip over anything if it doesn't seem quite as interesting as I would like it to be. Classical antiquity. A few references to men changing into wolves are found in ancient Greek literature and mythology. Herodotus, in his histories, wrote that the Neuri, a tribe he places to the northeast of Scythia, were all transformed into wolves once every year for several days, and then changed back to their human shape. In the 2nd century BC, the Greek geographer Pausanias related the story of Lycaon, who was transformed into a wolf because he had ritually murdered a child. In accounts by the Bibliotheca 3.8.1 and Ovid, Metamorphoses 1.219 to 239, Lycaon or Lycaon, however you say that, serves human flesh to Zeus, wanting to know if he is really a god. Lycaon's transformation, therefore, is punishment for a crime, considered variously as murder, cannibalism, and impiety, or impiety, however you say that. Ovid also relates stories of men who roamed the woods of Arcadia in the form of wolves. Arcadia, that's interesting. I'm pretty sure that's another name for Atlantis, if I'm not mistaken. The woods of Arcadia. In addition to Ovid, other Roman writers also mention lycanthropy. Virgil wrote of human beings transforming into wolves. Pliny the Elder relates 2 tales of lycanthropy. Quoting Euenthus, he mentions a man who hung his clothes on an ash tree and swam across an Arcadian lake, transforming him into a wolf. On the condition that he attack no human being for 9 years, he would be free to swim back across the lake to resume human form. Pliny also quotes Agriopas regarding a tale of a man who was turned into a wolf after tasting the entrails of a human child, but was restored to human form 10 years later. In the Latin work of prose, the Satyricon, written circa AD 60 by Gaius Petronius Arbiter, one of the characters, Nikeros, tells a story at a banquet about a friend who turned into a wolf. Chapters 61 to 62. He describes the incident as follows, quote, "When I look from my buddy, I see he'd stripped and piled his clothes by the roadside. He pees in a circle round his clothes and then, just like that, turns into a wolf. After he turned into a wolf, he started howling and then ran off into the woods." End quote. Interesting. All right, let's see. We're just going to skip through some of this. Lycanthropy as a medical condition. That sounds interesting. Some modern researchers have tried to explain the reports of werewolf behavior with recognized medical conditions. Dr. Lee Illis of Guy's Hospital in London wrote a paper in 1963 entitled On Porphyria and the Etiology of Werewolves, in which he argues that historical accounts on werewolves could have in fact been referring to victims of congenital porphyria, stating how the symptoms of photosensitivity, reddish teeth, and psychosis could have been grounds for accusing a sufferer of being a werewolf. This is, however, argued against by Woodward, who points out how mythological werewolves were almost invariably portrayed as resembling true wolves, and that their human forms were rarely physically conspicuous as porphyria victims. Others have pointed out the possibility of historical werewolves having been sufferers of hypertrichosis, a hereditary condition manifesting itself in excessive hair growth. However, Woodward dismissed the possibility, as the rarity of the disease ruled it out from happening on a large scale, as werewolf cases were in medieval Europe. People suffering from Down syndrome have been suggested by some scholars to have been possible originators of werewolf myths. Woodward suggested rabies as the origin of werewolf beliefs, claiming remarkable similarities between the symptoms of that disease and some of the legends. Woodward focused on the idea that being bitten by a werewolf could result in the victim turning into one, which suggested the idea of a transmittable disease like rabies. However, the idea that lycanthropy could be transmitted in this way is not part of the original myths and legends and only appears in relatively recent beliefs. Lycanthropy can also be met with as the main content of a delusion. For example, the case of a woman has been reported who, during episodes of acute psychosis, complained of becoming 4 different species of animals. Wow, fascinating stuff. Well, I mean, if you look back into history, I guess apparently from stuff I've read online, there are actual like legal documents that have to do with alleged cases of lycanthropy or of werewolves. I mean, this stuff was apparently, I've looked it up online before from, as far as I can tell, reputable sources. There were actual legal documents where there were court cases where people were literally accused of being werewolves. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean that they were werewolves, but this stuff was like in courts in like, I can't remember exactly when. I'm thinking roughly like 1600s-ish, somewhere in there. Wait, for real? Yes, indeed. You could probably Google it. Probably just search like real cases of werewolves or something like that, or real or like legal cases of werewolves or something. I'm not sure. But yeah, it makes you wonder. It makes you wonder. Let's see. Folk beliefs. Characteristics. The beliefs classed together under lycanthropy are far from uniform, and the term is somewhat capriciously applied. The transformation may be temporary or permanent. The were animal may be the man himself metamorphosed, maybe his double whose activity leaves the real man to all appearance unchanged, maybe his soul, which goes forth seeking whomever it may devour, leaving its body in a state of trance, or it may be no more than the messenger of the human being, a real animal or a familiar spirit, whose intimate connection with its owner is shown by the fact that any injury to it is believed, by a phenomenon known as repercussion, to cause a corresponding injury to the human being. Well, what's also interesting to consider here, so typical werewolf legend, obviously, is that the werewolf transformation happens on the night of the full moon. Well, it just so happens, as most of my viewers I'm sure know by now, that I study astrology. And I can tell you that what a full moon is in astrology is a sun-moon opposition. That's essentially symbolizing the ego, or perhaps sense of self, depending on how you interpret it, in conflict with the emotions or the subconscious. Now, what happens when there's that kind of inner conflict going on, or in some cases even conflict with other people? You could say that the beast in a person comes out. You see where I'm going with this? So if we look at what werewolves and legends of werewolves symbolize to us, perhaps, I'm theorizing here, but on an archetypal level, I think, and I've had this sneaking suspicion for a long time, that it just may be this idea of, at some point, the stuff that we've repressed has to come out. The beast that is building up through that lunar cycle has to come out at some point. But that's just my theory. So, continuing. Werewolves were said in European folklore to bear telltale physical traits even in their human form. These included the meeting of both eyebrows at the bridge of the nose, curved fingernails, low-set ears, and a swinging stride. One method of identifying a werewolf in its human form was to cut the flesh of the accused under the pretense that fur would be seen within the wound. A Russian superstition recalls a werewolf can be recognized by bristles under the tongue. The appearance of a werewolf in its animal form varies from culture to culture, though it is most commonly portrayed as being indistinguishable from ordinary wolves, save for the fact that it has no tail, a trait thought characteristic of witches in animal form, is often larger, and retains human eyes and a voice. According to some Swedish accounts, the werewolf could be distinguished from a regular wolf by the fact that it would run on 3 legs, stretching the fourth one backwards to look like a tail. After returning to their human forms, werewolves are usually documented as becoming weak, debilitated, and undergoing painful nervous depression. One universally reviled trait in medieval Europe was the werewolf's habit of devouring recently buried corpses, a trait that is documented extensively, particularly in the Annals Medico-Psychologiques in the 19th century. Fennoscandian werewolves were usually old women who possessed poison-coated claws and had the ability to paralyze cattle and children with their gaze. Wow. Becoming a werewolf. Various methods for becoming a werewolf have been reported, one of the simplest being the removal of clothing and putting on a belt made of wolf skin, probably as a substitute for the assumption of an entire animal skin, which also is frequently described. In other cases, the body is rubbed with a magic salve. Drinking rainwater out of the footprint of the animal in question or from certain enchanted streams were also considered effectual modes of accomplishing metamorphosis. The 16th century Swedish writer Olaus Magnus says that the Livonian werewolves were initiated by draining a cup of specially prepared beer and repeating a set formula. Ralston, in his Songs of the Russian People, gives the form of incantation still familiar in Russia. In Italy, France, and Germany, it was said that a man or woman could turn into a werewolf if he or she, on a certain Wednesday or Friday, slept outside on a summer night with the full moon shining directly on his or her face. In other cases, the transformation was supposedly accomplished by satanic allegiance for the most loathsome ends, often for the sake of sating a craving for human flesh. The werewolves, writes Richard Verstegen, Restitution of Decayed Intelligence, 1628, quote, are certain sorcerers who, having anointed their bodies with an ointment which they make by the instinct of the devil, and putting on a certain enchanted girdle, does not only unto the view of others seem as wolves, but to their own thinking have both the shape and nature of wolves, so long as they wear the said girdle, and they do dispose themselves as very wolves, in worrying and killing, and most of humane creatures. End quote. Wow. The phenomenon of repercussion, the power of animal metamorphosis, or of sending out a familiar, real or spiritual, as a messenger, and the supernormal powers conferred by association with such a familiar, are also attributed to the magician, male and female, all the world over, and which superstitions are closely parallel to, if not identical with, lycanthropic beliefs, the occasional involuntary character of lycanthropy being almost the sole distinguishing feature. In another direction, the phenomenon of repercussion is asserted to manifest itself in connection with the bush soul of the West African and the Nagual of Central America. But though there is no line of demarcation to be drawn on logical grounds, the assumed power of the magician and the intimate association of the bush soul or the Nagual with a human being are not termed lycanthropy. The curse of lycanthropy was also considered by some scholars as being a divine punishment. Werewolf literature shows many examples of God or saints allegedly cursing those who invoked their wrath with werewolfism, such as the case of Lycaon, who was turned into a wolf by Zeus as punishment for slaughtering one of his own sons and serving his remains to the gods as a dinner. Those who were excommunicated by the Roman Catholic Church were also said to become werewolves. Were-duck indeed, Ryan. Man, that would be pretty wild. From werewolves to were-ducks. The power of transforming others into wild beasts was attributed not only to malignant sorcerers, but to Christian saints as well. Omnis angeli, boni et mali, ex virtute naturali habent potestatem transmutandi corpora nostra. All angels, good and bad, have the power of transmutating our bodies, apparently is what that means. Was the datum of St. Thomas Aquinas. St. Patrick was said to have transformed by transformed the Welsh king Veredicus into a wolf. Natalis supposedly cursed an illustrious Irish family whose members were each doomed to be a wolf for 7 years. In other tales, the divine agency is even more direct, while in Russia, again, men supposedly became werewolves when incurring the wrath of the devil. A notable exception to the association of lycanthropy and the devil comes from a rare and lesser-known account of an 80-year-old man named Tice. In 1692, in Jurgensburg, Livonia, Tice testified under oath that he and other werewolves were the hounds of God. Ooh, I think I did a video mentioning this years ago. I think this is one of those cases I mentioned earlier, in fact. He claimed they were warriors who went down into hell to do battle with witches and demons. Their efforts ensured that the devil and his minions did not carry off the grain from local failed crops down to hell. Tice was steadfast in his assertions, claiming that werewolves in Germany and Russia also did battle with the devil's minions in their own versions of hell, and insisted that when werewolves died, their souls were welcomed into heaven as reward for their service. Tice was ultimately sentenced to 10 lashes for idolatry and superstitious belief. See, now shit like that makes me wonder, like, what drives a person exactly to get to that point where they literally claim that they are a werewolf, and that they're doing battle with like the devil and demons and witches, in like the service of God, or a divine being or whatever. I mean, like, how does a person actually get to that point is what I'm kind of wondering. Connection to revenants. I feel like we're getting into the more dark and delicious part of the Wikipedia article. Before the end of the 19th century, the Greeks believed that the corpses of werewolves, if not destroyed, would return to life in the form of wolves or hyenas which prowled battlefields, drinking the blood of dying soldiers. In the same vein, in some rural areas of Germany, Poland, and northern France, it was once believed that people who died in mortal sin came back to life as blood-drinking wolves. These quote-unquote undead werewolves would return to their human corpse form at daylight. They were dealt with by decapitation with a spade and exorcism by the parish priest. The head would then be thrown into a stream, where the weight of its sins was thought to weigh it down. Sometimes the same methods used to dispose of ordinary vampires would be used. The vampire was also linked to the werewolf in East European countries, particularly Bulgaria, Serbia, and Slovenia. In Serbia, the werewolf and vampire are known collectively as Volkodlak. Wow. Hey, Ryan, thank you so much for the donation. I appreciate that. Jughead is a werewolf versus a vampire, Veronica Lodge. Recent comic I saw. Ah, I see. Sounds like a fascinating comic indeed. Yeah, it's. Hang on, let me fix this on my screen real quick. That's funny. Volkodlak. Isn't there a character in Skyrim? Not to bring that up again, but I guess I'm bringing it up again. But called Kodlak, I think there is. But yeah, like, it's interesting to me. And again, when we consider the psychological aspect of these things, just how much the idea of the werewolf has permeated fiction, in modern times. Books, movies, probably some TV shows out there. I don't know. I don't pay much attention to TV shows most of the time, but there are probably some as well with, werewolves in them. So interesting. And again, I say this having literally Underworld Awakening Blu-ray on its way to me right now, which I'm very excited to finally own. The audio and video quality is off the charts. I know because I rented it years ago. No worries, been wanting to donate for a while. Well, thank you again. Yeah, never feel like you have to donate, but thank you so much for that, just the same. I'll put that money to good use. Hungary and Balkans. In Hungarian folklore, the werewolves used to live especially in the region of Transdanubia, and it was thought that the ability to change into a wolf was obtained in the infant age after the suffering of abuse by the parents or by a curse. At the age of 7, the boy or the girl leaves the house and goes hunting by night and can change to person or wolf whenever he wants. The curse can also be obtained when, in the adulthood, the person passed 3 times through an arch made of a birch with the help of a wild rose's spine. Interesting stuff. The werewolves were known to exterminate all kind of farm animals, especially sheep. The transformation usually occurred in the winter solstice, Easter, and full moon. Later, in the 17th and 18th century, the trials in Hungary not only were conducted against witches, but against werewolves too, and many records exist creating connections between both kinds. Also, the vampires and werewolves are closely related in Hungary, being both feared in the antiquity. This stuff is so, I don't know about for you guys, but I find it so interesting. Like, I thought that I was going to, go live tonight with this stream and maybe be on here for 2 hours talking about werewolves, and that would be it, like looking up stuff on them. But actually, this is, I don't know, really fascinating to me. I don't know if I can stay longer than 2 hours. I don't know. I guess we'll see how I feel when we get to that point. But I'm probably going to have to do at least a part 2 to this stream at some point, werewolves part 2, and maybe a part 3, 4, or 5. Who knows? This is, I'm fascinated by this. I had no idea it would be this, I don't know, rich with details, I guess. Wonder if the Aboriginals in Canada believed in a werewolf-like creature. Wendigo. I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on this, but I'm almost certain that in that general region, there was a belief in a creature known as a Wendigo, which isn't exactly a werewolf, but a werewolf-like creature, if I'm remembering things correctly. We can look that up next. So let's see, where were we? Okay. Among the South Slavs, and also among the Kashubs of what is now northern Poland, clarification needed, Wikipedia says for that, there was the belief that if a child was born with hair, a birthmark, or a caul on their head, that's C-A-U-L, caul, I think that's how you say it, I don't know, they were supposed to possess shape-shifting abilities. Though capable of turning into any animal they wished, it was commonly believed that such people preferred to turn into a wolf. Serbian vukodlaks traditionally had the habit of congregating annually in the winter months, when they would strip off their wolf skins and hang them from trees. They would then get a hold of another vukodlak skin and burn it, releasing from its curse the vukodlak from whom the skin came. They would strip off their wolf skins and hang them from trees. They would then get a hold of another vukodlak skin and burn it, releasing from its curse the vukodlak from whom the skin came. Wow. Yeah, I am virtually certain. No, I am certain. There's a character in Skyrim named Kodlak, and it has something to do with werewolves, but I can't remember what. Sorry if that seems like a minor spoiler for that game. I don't know. I don't think it's a spoiler. Let's see. Obsessed with dogman / werewolves. I don't blame you. It's definitely one of my favorite paranormal subjects. Well, specifically dogman, but I guess the idea of werewolves kind of goes right along with that. Dogmen. Naps. Yeah, maybe that's what I should have done, taken a nap before the stream. Then I could just easily go all night. But no, I feel pretty good. I almost didn't go live tonight because I felt kind of crappy, but I'm glad that I did. It's interesting. Whenever I feel like that, if I go live anyway, typically it's like I get the energy moving, or the energy starts moving as a result of like presenting stuff and interacting with you guys, and before I know it, I'm feeling much better and much more energized. So I think that's funny how that works. Like, I don't know if you could tell, but well, if you were here at the beginning of the stream, or if you watch this when this is not live, at the beginning I was a little bit off, a little bit more, I don't know, OCD than usual, and stumbling a little bit because I felt out of it somewhat before going live, but now I feel better. Glad you did too. Good. Yes, it was a very good decision. I wasn't sure at the time. I was like, what if I'm too tired? But no, I'm good. Caucuses. According to Armenian lore, there are women who, in consequence of deadly sins, are condemned to spend 7 years in wolf form. In a typical account, a condemned woman is visited by a wolfskin-toting spirit who orders her to wear the skin, which causes her to acquire frightful cravings for human flesh soon after. With her better nature overcome, the she-wolf devours each of her own children, then her relatives' children in order of relationship, and finally the children of strangers. She wanders only at night, with doors and locks springing open at her approach. When morning arrives, she reverts to human form and removes her wolf skin. The transformation is generally said to be involuntary, but there are alternate versions involving voluntary metamorphosis, where the women can transform at will. Wow. And let me make sure there's not a freaking flea on me. Okay, now I'm good. Like I said, there appears to be a minor, just minor, thankfully, but minor flea infestations, and every time I feel the tiniest itch, I'm paranoid that a flea is biting me. But anyway, so I apologize for that distraction. Just something that I have to deal with, I guess, for now at least. Anyway, Americas and Caribbean. The Naskapis believe that the caribou afterlife is guarded by giant wolves which kill careless hunters venturing too near. The Navajo people feared witches in wolf's clothing called my cob. Ooh. Woodward thought that these beliefs were due to the Norse colonization of the Americas. When the European colonization of the Americas occurred, the pioneers brought their own werewolf folklore with them, and were later influenced by the lore of their neighboring colonies and those of the natives. Belief in the loup-garou present in Canada, here we go with Canada, the upper and lower peninsulas of Michigan and upstate New York, originates from French folklore influenced by Native American stories on the Wendigo. There you go. In Mexico, there is a belief in a creature called the Nahual, which traditionally limits itself to stealing cheese and raping women rather than murder. Oh my God. Citation needed, Wikipedia says for that. In Haiti, there is a superstition that werewolf spirits known locally as Yeux Rouge, red eyes, can possess the bodies of unwitting persons and nightly transform them into cannibalistic lupine creatures. The Haitian Yeux Rouge, or Yeux Rouges, typically try to trick mothers into giving away their children voluntarily by waking them at night and asking their permission to take their child, to which the disoriented mother may either reply yes or no. The Haitian Yeux Rouges differ from traditional European werewolves by their habit of actively trying to spread their lycanthropic condition to others, much like vampires. Wow. Let's see. I'm reading the chat. Entered a contest to win 25 grand to pay off a car loan. Sweet. Good luck with that. Roughly 25 grand on my car loan right now. Well, from what I've heard from those who claim to know this kind of stuff, if you want to win a contest like that or win the lottery or whatever, it's all a matter of focusing yourself into the parallel reality where you are the one who wins that contest, essentially by believing that you will win, convincing yourself that it will happen. So I would say play with that knowledge and see what happens. You just might win. Hang on, I'm going to glance at my phone real quick as long as we're in between sections. Okay. So the next section is modern reception. Poetic got it correct. Yes, I did. Yay me. Suddenly feel uncomfortable listening to this in the dark. But that's half the fun, isn't it? Scaring yourself half to death. At least for me it is. All right, here we go. Werewolf fiction. Most modern fiction describes werewolves as vulnerable to silver weapons and highly resistant to other injuries. This feature appears in German folklore of the 19th century. The claim that the beast of Gevaden, however you say that, maybe it's Gevaden, I have no idea, an 18th century wolf or wolf-like creature, was shot by a silver bullet appears to have been introduced by novelists retelling the story from 1935 onwards and not in earlier versions. Wait, let me say this before I forget. So it's interesting, like how I mentioned earlier, as most, if not virtually all of my viewers know by now, I also study astrology, and the whole idea of the werewolf typically is that in legend, a person transforms under the full moon. And in astrology, a full moon is basically a sun-moon or a sun-moon opposition. What's interesting also about that I forgot to mention earlier is, in case you haven't noticed, while werewolves may be a thing of fiction, people behaving with like extra agitation and extra aggression during a full moon appears, at least from my experience and in the opinion of quite a few other people, to be a very real thing. You know, when there's a full moon, people are more like on edge, they're more aggressive, there's more of like a sort of restlessness, you know, about, and obviously it's going to be more so for some people than others, but nevertheless, that's a thing. And so I think, Legends of Werewolves, where a beast comes out at the time of the full moon, and the time of the full moon is already where people get extra aggressive. Could there be a connection there? I wonder, you know, could that be maybe somehow linked to the origin of the werewolf legend? Let's see. Seeing the car I owned in high school a few times, thinking something I can't wait to own one of those. Oh, really? And a decade later, I do. Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. Yeah. Well, your beliefs form reality. There you go. There's a demonology tarot book deck available for sale in my area. Oh, fascinating. Sounds like something I'd like to get. Actually, it's funny you say that because I have a new tarot deck on the way right now, by the way. Got my payment from Google at long last, and I decided to buy a new deck of tarot cards called the Tarot of Vampires. So I'll be sure to show that to everyone on a stream or 2 or 3 when it arrives. It's on its way to me now. I just ordered it yesterday. I'm really excited. Supposedly the cards are very striking in person. And as the name implies, they're based entirely on vampires, vampirism, or, you know, whatever, vampire imagery. So, continuing. English folklore prior to 1865 showed shapeshifters to be vulnerable to silver. Quote, till the publicans shot a silver button over their heads when they were instantly transformed into 2 ill-favored old ladies. End quote. Wow. Circa 1640, the city of Greifswald, Germany, was infested by werewolves. Quote, a clever lad suggested that they gather all their silver buttons, goblets, and belt buckles, and so forth, and melt them down into bullets for their muskets and pistols. This time they slaughtered the creatures and rid Greifswald of the lycanthropes. End quote. Vampires are tight. Yeah, it's pretty awesome cards as well. Like, actually, I have a copy of the images of them on my computer, which if I had some kind of streaming software, I'm sure I could show that, but I don't, unfortunately. I guess I could somehow pull it up on my tablet maybe, but no, I'll definitely show the cards when they arrive. Sweet, now I want it to. Yeah, they're available on Amazon. Just search Tarot Vampires on Amazon. I think they were $22, 22 US dollars. All right, where were we? I'll have to like practice doing readings with them, and then when it gets close to Halloween, I can do readings on stream with them. I can do like live tarot reading streams with those cards as like a sort of Halloween theme. It'll be great. Hopefully it'll be great. Anyway, the 1897 novel Dracula. Wow, that's weirdly coincidental. We were just talking about vampires. And the short story Dracula's Guest, both written by Bram Stoker, drew on earlier mythologies of werewolves and similar legendary demons and, quote, was to voice the anxieties of an age, end quote, and the, quote, fears of late Victorian patriarchy, end quote. In Dracula's Guest, a band of military horsemen coming to the aid of the protagonist chase off Dracula, depicted as a great wolf, stating the only way to kill it is by a sacred bullet. This is also mentioned in the main novel Dracula as well. Count Dracula stated in the novel that legends of werewolves originated from his Zekeli racial bloodline, who himself is also depicted with the ability to shapeshift into a wolf at will during the night, but is unable to do so during the day except at noon. Fascinating. The first feature film to use an anthropomorphic werewolf was Werewolf of London in 1935. The main werewolf of this film is a dapper London scientist who retains some of his style and most of his human features after his transformation, as lead actor Henry Hall was unwilling to spend the long hours being made up by makeup artist Jack Pierce. Universal Studios drew on a Balkan tale of a plant associated with lycanthropy, as there was no literary work to draw upon, unlike the case with vampires. There is no reference to silver nor other aspects of werewolf lore, such as cannibalism. So, on that note, many years ago, with my living the sort of fucked up life that I've lived, and peering into areas of all kinds of weird research, weird fringe research, I came across someone who claimed to be in the know that in the movie The Howling, which I think was released in 1980 or thereabouts, that the werewolf transformation depicted in that movie, now I'm not saying I believe this is what this person believed or claimed to be real. This person said that werewolf transformation was actually, can't believe I'm saying this. Oh well, people already think I'm crazy probably, so fuck it. Was actually a real life werewolf transformation, a real werewolf that they somehow got on set and transformed. Now, I don't believe that for a second, but I think it's fascinating to consider that there's someone out there who claims to be in the know and is convinced of that. And I've watched that movie. It's been a long time. I did watch it though, and I think I recall it being pretty damn good, but I'd have to watch it again to give, a better opinion about it. Happy I caught the stream tonight for sure. Thank you so much. I know this is good stuff, isn't it? This werewolf stuff. I'm definitely going to do at least a part 2 to this, if not like a part 3, 4, 5, like I said earlier. Fringe research is best research. It is. It is. All right, let's see here. Where were we? A more tragic character is Lawrence Talbot, played by Lon Chaney Jr. in 1941's The Wolfman. With Pierce's makeup more elaborate this time, the movie catapulted the werewolf into public consciousness. Sympathetic portrayals are few but notable, such as the comedic but tortured protagonist David Naughton in An American Werewolf in London, and a less anguished and more confident and charismatic Jack Nicholson in the 1994 film Wolf. Over time, the depiction of werewolves has gone from fully malevolent to even heroic creatures, such as in the underworld. Yay, that's what's on the way to me right now, as I have mentioned several times already. And Twilight series. No offense if you like Twilight, but I'm not a fan. As well as Blood Lad, Dance in the Vampire Bund, Rosario plus Vampire, and various other movies, anime, manga, and comic books. Other werewolves are decidedly more willful and malevolent, such as those in the novel The Howling, now there that is, and its subsequent sequels and film adaptations. The form a werewolf assumes was generally anthropomorphic in early films such as The Wolfman and Werewolf of London, but larger and powerful wolf in many later films. The werewolf was properly trained as an actor. I know, it sounds so absurd, like I have to like keep from laughing. It's like hilarious to me. Now I need to go watch it too because you have me dumbfounded. Yeah, I mean, whatever the hell it is, I think it's worth watching from what I recall. And it's funny because so I'm a big music fan, if that's not obvious. Within Temptations album, what was it called? The Heart of Everything. There were multiple songs on that album that were about movies. One of them was called The Howling, which I always assumed was about the movie The Howling, especially when literally other songs on the album are about movies. But in a recent thing on YouTube, I think it was the lead singer, the lead singer, Sharon Den Adele, she mentioned the movies that were covered on that album, or that were, that they made songs about on the album, but she did not mention The Howling. So I'm thinking, did she just forget to include that? Or was that like a weird coincidence that they made a song that sounds very much like it's about werewolves with the same name of that movie? I mean, I don't know. But regardless, Within Temptation's song, The Howling, is a song that sounds very, very much like it's about werewolves, if you're interested in that. And I think it's amazing. I hear them getting closer. The howls are sending chills down my spine. Our time is running out now. They're coming down the hills from behind. Okay, where were we? All right. Werewolves are often depicted as immune to damage caused by ordinary weapons, being vulnerable only to silver objects, such as a silver-tipped cane, bullet, or blade. This attribute was first adopted cinematically in The Wolfman. This negative reaction to silver is sometimes so strong that the mere touch of the metal on a werewolf's skin will cause burns. Current-day werewolf fiction almost exclusively involves lycanthropy being either a hereditary condition or being transmitted like an infectious disease by the bite of another werewolf. In some fiction, the power of the werewolf extends to human form, such as invulnerability to conventional injury due to their healing factor, superhuman speed and strength, and falling on their feet from high falls. Also, aggressiveness and animalistic urges may be intensified and harder to control. Hunger, sexual arousal. Usually, in these cases, the abilities are diminished in human form. In other fiction, it can be cured by medicine men or antidotes. Along with the vulnerability to the silver bullet, the full moon being the cause of the transformation only became part of the depiction of werewolves on a widespread basis in the 20th century. The first movie to feature the transformative effect of the full moon was Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman in 1943. Wow. Sounds like lyrics my band would write. Does it? They're very good lyrics. They're very good. Where rabies? I need to apply some of this stuff. See, this is going to drive me crazy. We're already an hour and 5 minutes in, and I feel like I could go all night studying this stuff. But I don't know if I can do that or not. Oh boy, let's see what this says. Nazi Germany. Jeez, I hope I don't get flagged or some shit. Nazi Germany used Werewolf as the mythical creature's name is spelled in German in 1942 to 43 as the code name for one of Hitler's headquarters. In the war's final days, the Nazi Operation Werewolf aimed at creating a commando force that would operate behind enemy lines as the Allies advanced through Germany itself. Two fictional depictions of Operation Werewolf, the US television series True Blood, and the 2012 novel Wolf Hunter by J.L. Benet, mix the two meanings of werewolf by depicting the 1945 die-hard Nazi commandos as being actual werewolves. And then Wikipedia says citation needed. All right, well, that's finally it for the Wikipedia information on werewolves. By the way, kind of funny seeing True Blood there. Speaking of that, I actually watched that show back when it was on, and I enjoyed it immensely for a while, but the later seasons, I wasn't so sure about those. Anyway, yeah, why don't we, as long as it was brought up, and I said we'd look at it next, look a little more closely at the Wendigo specifically. And let's not go to Wikipedia because we were just there. Ancientorigins.net. Let's feast on their flesh, metaphorically. Let's see here. Isn't the Wendigo and shapeshifter the same thing? Because I've been hearing a lot of people say that they're the same thing in interviews. Huh. I don't think so, but I also don't know for sure. I mean, I'm sure they're very similar, but I don't know if they're exactly the same thing. I don't know. Maybe we'll find out in this article. Let's see. The Wendigo, a terrifying beast with an insatiable hunger for human flesh. The Wendigo is a horrifying creature of Algonquin Native American legends that would devour human flesh to survive a harsh winter. But are they only myth, or are there really cannibalistic humanoids waiting in forests for their next victim? The Algonquins are some of the most extensive and numerous of the Native American groups in North America, and they once lived all along the Atlantic coast and the Great Lakes region. However, Wendigo-like creatures are also found in the legends of other Native American tribes, including the neighbors of the Algonquins, the Iroquois. Amongst these peoples, a creature known as the Stonecoat bears some similarities to the Wendigo. A Wendigo's insatiable hunger. Roughly translated, the word Wendigo, also spelt Wendigo and Wendigo, means the evil spirit that devours mankind. Another translation, said to be made by a German explorer around 1860, equates the word Wendigo with cannibal. Wendigoag are said to have an insatiable hunger for human flesh. No matter how much flesh they eat, they remain hungry. This hunger is reflected in their appearance, which, according to some, is extremely thin. Despite their gaunt physiques, Wendigoag are described by some as giants, measuring at about 4.5 meters, 14.8 feet in height. Whilst there are slight variations as to the physical description of this creature amongst the different Algonquin peoples, it is generally agreed that Wendigoag have glowing eyes, long yellowed fangs, and long tongues. Most Wendigoag are also said to have sallow and yellowish skin, though others say that they are matted with hair or have decaying skin. Yeah, the Wendigo is featured in the video game Until Dawn, and also in an old episode of the show Charmed, I do recall. And in that, it's depicted definitely as more of a werewolf-like creature. The things I've been exposed to over the years. Anyway. Legends say that the Wendigoag were once human beings. According to the most popular version of the story, a Wendigo is formed whenever a human being resorted to cannibalism, even if it were done in order to survive. When a person consumes the flesh of another human being, he or she is believed to be overcome by evil spirits and transformed into a Wendigo. Deals with the devil and where to find a Wendigo. In another version of the story, the first Wendigo is said to have been a warrior who made a deal with the devil. In order to save his tribe, he gave up his soul and was transformed into a Wendigo. When peace ensued, there was no need for such a fearsome creature, and the warrior was banished from his tribe and forced to live as an outcast. Some believe that the human person continues to reside within the Wendigo, specifically where its heart should be. This person is frozen, and the only way to kill a Wendigo is to kill the human within it as well. A few legends state that the frozen person is successfully rescued from inside the creature. In most cases, however, death is the only way to free a person from the Wendigo. Interesting. Wendigoag are believed to roam around the forests where the Algonkins lived, and forest dwellers that disappeared over the years are rumored to have been eaten by these creatures. Many Wendigo sightings have been reported over time, not only by Native Americans, but by white settlers as well. For example, between the late 1800s and 1920s, a Wendigo is said to have appeared near a town called Roseo in northern Minnesota. It has been claimed that each time a sighting of this creature was made, an unexpected death followed. The sightings, however, eventually stopped, and things went back to normal. Amongst the Cree, there is a traditional dance called the Wittakakkensimuan, or Wendigo-like dance. During the dance, the fearsome Wendigo is portrayed satirically by the dancers. In addition to satirizing, how do you say that? Satirizing, I have no idea. The Wendigo. Some Native Americans even became Wendigo hunters. Belief in the Wendigo forms just a small part of American belief in the supernatural, with one in 8 Americans having admitted to a psychic reading, according to the Psychic Guild. What the hell do psychic readings really have to do with a belief in Wendigo or like werewolves or whatever? But whatever. If I walked far enough into the northern Alberta woods or even farther north, the woods of the Northwest Territories, I'd either encounter a Wendigo or a doomsday prepper. Oh my. Yeah, and those doomsday preppers, that's a whole nother strange and fascinating subject. Makes you wonder, though, all these deep, dark woods that we have around the world. Makes you wonder, like, what could be lurking within them, you know? Just because we humans think that we have so thoroughly mapped the world doesn't mean that that's actually accurate, you know? We certainly haven't mapped our oceans thoroughly, the depths of the oceans. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty damn sure we haven't come anywhere close to mapping the depths of our woods and forests either. So, I mean, who knows what could be living out there in the deep dark of the woods. At the beginning of the 20th century, an 87-year-old Cree man by the name of Jack Fiddler was tried for the murder of a Cree woman. Whilst he pleaded guilty to the crime, he defended himself by saying that the woman was on the verge of transforming into a Wendigo, as she was being possessed by the evil spirit. Therefore, she had to be killed before she murdered other members of the tribe. In addition to this woman, Fiddler claimed to have slain at least 13 other Wendigoag during his lifetime. Let's see. Oh, looks like that's it for that article. Okay. Cree used to live all around my area, central Alberta. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I bet a lot of Native Americans used to live around my area here in PA, Pennsylvania, in the U.S. I own 3,000 pounds of canned soup, 30 rifles, and 5 canoes. Okay, then, Dave. Oh, no. Yeah, that's some crazy shit. I mean, more power to people if they wanna be a doomsday prepper or whatever. But I could not live my life like that. Actually, what really pisses me off about stuff like that, and I'm not going to get deep into this because it's a stream about werewolves and not this sort of thing, but I don't know. All these doomsayers that I heard so many years ago being like, oh, like, you know, this is going to happen or that's going to happen. Society's going to collapse and we're on the verge of this, we're on the verge of that. What really fucking pisses me off is here we are like a decade or more later, and basically none of that has happened. And so it's like, wow. But actually what's really outrageous about it is none of it has happened, but there are still people who like listen to those people that say, oh, you know, this is going to take us out, or that's going to take us out, or society's going to collapse for this reason or that reason, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. Maybe I just don't know enough about it, but I don't know. People still listen to those doomsayers out there. And I think they were saying this shit 10, 15, maybe in some cases 20 years ago or whatever, and it still hasn't happened. Like, why should we believe them now exactly? But there are people who are saying that I'm just not looking at reality or whatever, and okay, fine. You look at reality, I'll continue following my excitement, I guess. Anyway, let's go back to werewolves. Am I a philosopher? I have no idea. I don't consider myself a philosopher, but who knows? I mean, to be fair, if I was living in a village as, I don't know, blacksmith apprentice in like 500 BC, I have a feeling that message or that comment continues. So anyway, going back to werewolves, the next thing we see here is an article from livescience.com. So let's check that out. And one day suddenly here comes the Roman army and they destroy everything I once knew as my entire world. I believe it was doomsday. Yes, that's a good point. Perspective is everything. And context is always important. All right, let's check this out. Werewolves, Lore, Legend, and Lycanthropy by Benjamin Radford, Live Science contributor, October 30th, 2012, 6:35 p.m. Eastern Time. Werewolves, literally man-wolves, are shape-shifting. Do not pop up on my screen right now, please. Are shape-shifting creatures with unusual speed, strength, reflexes, and senses. They can be found in countless books, films, and television shows, from the horror classic The Wolfman to the Twilight and Underworld series. Those two again, for whatever reason. Though werewolves often play second fiddle to vampires and zombies in terms of pop culture man monsters, they have a long and rich history. How about after this article, since it keeps coming up in these articles, we read the Blu-ray.com review / description of Underworld Awakenings, just because it's on its way to me, and I think that would be fascinating to do real quick. Because I'm telling you, that's some high quality shit right there, audio, video, off the charts. Especially for the year that it came out. Anyway, creating werewolves. Traditionally, there were several ways that a person could become a werewolf. In her book, Giants, Monsters, and Dragons, folklorist Carol Rose notes that, quote, in ancient Greece, it was believed that a person could be transformed by eating the meat of a wolf that had been mixed with that of a human, and that the condition was irreversible, end quote. Centuries later, other methods were said to create werewolves, including, quote, being cursed or by being conceived under a new moon, or by having eaten certain herbs, or by sleeping under the full moon on Friday, or by drinking water that has been touched by a wolf, end quote. It was also widely believed that werewolves could dress in a special protective wolf skin, though they had to remove it at daybreak and hide it. If their magical pelt was found and taken from the werewolf in human form, he or she could be killed. A similar theme appears in the Scottish and Irish folklore of the Selkies, creatures who spend their lives in the cold ocean as seals, but can change into human form by shedding their pelts. If they do so, they must hide their pelts, for if they are found, they can't change back into seals and must live on land with the fishermen who possess their skins. Oh my. Never seen Underworld. Yeah, I guess I have seen probably all the movies, but the first couple were so long ago, I can't actually really remember them, to be honest, but the later ones I think are pretty good. Although someone left after I mentioned that we would read that, so I don't know, maybe people aren't as interested in that. But well, it's not like we're going to spend an hour on it. I just thought we could read the little blurb about it real quick, just take a few minutes maybe. It's not going to be anything extensive. Let's see. Skip that. Though the full moon was originally only one of many possible causes of lycanthropy, it was the one that stuck in the public's mind. Today, many people still associate the moon with werewolves and madness. Some who work in police and emergency medical services have anecdotally claimed that full moon nights are busier, crazier, and more dangerous than other nights, just like I mentioned earlier. This perception may be rooted more in psychology and imagination than reality. Not true, if you look at the astrology of it. Carefully controlled studies have not found good evidence supporting this idea. Well, then show me a study that is showing that, if you want me to believe that, which this article is not. Furthermore, there is no known mechanism by which the moon would somehow influence a person's mind to make him or her more dangerous, except, of course, for their own imaginations and expectations. That's because the moon, not the moon, nor the sun, nor any planet or luminary is influencing anything. It is all a reflection of psychological reality, which whoever wrote this article would know if they really, really did their thorough research. But that's, of course, the world we live in, I suppose. All right, so real quick, I'm just going to check on the status of the stream, just because I haven't done that yet, and I'm curious. There's also like an advertisement on the site I'm on right now that I can't seem to close out of, weirdly enough. Yeah, I'm glad people like this, because I do too. It's a very fascinating subject. Few goosebump books are about werewolves: Werewolf of Fever Swamp, Werewolf of Skin, The Werewolf of Twisted Tree Lodge, Night in Werewolf Woods. Ooh. Huh. Maybe I'll have to try to get my hands on those at some point and read them. All right, let's check this out. Quote unquote real werewolves. Today, werewolves are known to be mythical creatures found in fiction instead of lurking in the dark woods, but that was not always the case. Not so long ago, belief in werewolves was common. Overall, there was little difference between the killings and activities of wolves and werewolves. Both would hunt at night, attacking sheep or livestock, and sometimes humans. The main difference was, of course, that the werewolf changed into human form at some point. There are several medical conditions that can mimic the appearance of a werewolf and may have contributed to early belief in the literal existence of the creatures. One is hypertrichosis, which creates unusually long hair on the face and body. A second condition, porphyria, is characterized by extreme sensitivity to light. thus encouraging its victims to only go out at night. By the way, if anyone is interested in knowing this, I have had quite the sensitivity to light all my life, well, particularly sunlight, bright sunlight. It's not as bad these days, weirdly enough. Like, especially ever since I don't know, I became an adult, it seemed like it kind of toned down somewhat. But when I was younger, it was damn hard for me to go out in the sun without sunglasses. It's particularly my eyes. So, not trying to say like I'm a werewolf or anything, not at all. But just saying that is a thing. I have it. In fact, even to this day, if it's a bright sunny day, I wouldn't be caught dead outside without sunglasses protecting my eyes. Like in the mornings and evenings, I'm pretty much fine usually. Sometimes more than others, but yeah, sensitivity to light. I am no stranger to that. So let's see, where were we? They were going over the symptoms, I guess. Second condition, porphyria, characterized by sensitivity to light, seizures, anxiety, and other symptoms. Oh, anxiety, another thing I have. Neither of these rare conditions turns anyone into a werewolf, of course, but centuries ago, when belief in witches, vampires, and magic was common, it didn't take much to spawn werewolf stories. I also, again, this is not a stream devoted to other things, but since this ties in, I'll just say this real quick. I also have a theory based on my observations of various things. Let's just say that, geez, how do I put this? That I don't even know how to say this, so I'm just going to try to say it, and hopefully the words make sense. That like a belief in vampires might have resulted from, and some of the things about vampires of legend may have resulted from people who lived like vampires, essentially, because I have a theory that, because they say one of the things with vampires is that they're very OCD. You know, if you look into the legends of them, that's one of the key things that they say. I have a theory that those who live very shut away from the world, and especially, again, this is just my theory, but those who know how to, let's say, work with their energy in very specific ways and direct and focus their energy, if they do that in that kind of like closed off from the world environment, always isolated from the world, I think that that can lead to OCD. And also, closed off from the world, you're going to tend to get very pale skin if you don't already have that naturally, and you know, all kinds of stuff that legend associate with vampires. So I think that maybe that legend came from that, from people basically being superstitious about those who, for whatever reason, maybe as a result of great trauma or something like that, ended up being isolated from the world, whether by choice or because they had to be or felt that they had to be for whatever reason. But again, that's just a theory of mine, just some things I've sort of put together over the years. Let me get caught up on the comments. Find werewolves, vampires, and other mythical creatures to be fascinating. I believe that it is highly possible to shapeshift, but also know people mistook many diseases back in the day as a curse. Ah, yes. Fascinating. Yeah, that's another thing that a lot of people believe in, is this idea of shapeshifters, which not just shapeshifting into werewolves, but all kinds of creatures. And at one point we prayed to the Greek gods. Now I put them in YA books and movies and teach them in classes as almost myth-like. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. I'm extremely sensitive to light, especially at nighttime, which makes driving at almost impossible. Oh, really? You're sensitive to light at nighttime? I'm sensitive to light during the daytime. Like, I'm fine during the nighttime. During the nighttime, I like come alive. So, you know, make of that what you will, I guess. During the day, I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I'm dying. And the nighttime hits, and especially if I have, you know, a Mountain Dew or something, I'm just like, ooh, I'm wide awake, you know. So maybe I am like, I don't know, fucking supernatural or something. My roommate has to wear goggles outside. He too has light sensitivity. Oh, really? Wow, holy shit. I don't have to wear goggles, but I literally have to wear sunglasses if it's very sunny out, or my eyes like it's not a pretty picture. Like I'll like squint and they'll I don't know. It's been so long; it's hard to remember what exactly happens. But it's like well, I mean, just imagine looking. Imagine for the normal person, if you want to know what this is like, at least for me, imagine looking into a super bright light, that feeling of like, oh, you want to look away. But imagine that you get that just on a typical sunny day without sunglasses. And it's like you can't look away because anywhere you look, it's too damn bright. And then, that's how I am without sunglasses on a bright sunny day. And like my eyes will like water and like, oh God, it's just terrible if I don't have sunglasses. But I always have sunglasses, so it's all right. All right, let's continue. Where were we? Oh crap, I've like so lost my place, I feel like. Okay, I think this is where we were. Let's just see. Clinical lycanthropy is a recognized medical condition in which a person believes himself or herself to be an animal, and indeed, there are rare cases where people have claimed to be werewolves. For example, in 1589, a German man named Peter Stubb claimed to own a belt of wolfskin that allowed him to change into a wolf. His body would bend into a lupine form, his teeth would multiply in his mouth, and he craved human blood. Oh, freaky. Stubb claimed to have killed at least a dozen people over 25 years, though his confession was made under difficult circumstances. After prolonged torture, including chunks of his flesh being ripped out with heated pincers and his limbs being crushed with stones, he was decapitated on Halloween 1589, and his headless body burned at the stake. There was no real evidence of his crimes other than his confession, and it seems likely that Stubb was mentally ill and delusional. Stubb was far from alone. In the Middle Ages, werewolves were thought to mostly be created by witches, and the two became closely associated. Just as tens of thousands of accused witches were put to death, usually in gruesome and sadistic ways, tens of thousands of accused werewolves were similarly dispatched. Jeez. Yeah, well, stuff that happened with witches, I think that was a whole nother thing, my theory anyway. I think that people were afraid of power, and when they saw, or even the idea of a witch, like working with the elements and stuff like that, and having any kind of power, they were terrified of. And so, out of superstition and fear, they unfortunately persecuted many people and tortured and all kinds of horrific shit. But I don't know. I don't want to go on a tangent on that either, because again, that's not what this stream is about. But I don't know. More and more as I look at it, if you want my opinion, funny thing about it is witchcraft or real witchcraft. It's like based on actual like real like working stuff, like actual. I almost want to say laws of physics, but I don't know if that would technically be accurate or not. But no, I don't practice witchcraft myself. I'm just saying that it makes a hell of a lot more sense than other things, but that's as far as I'm going with that. Let me read the comments. Car lights are so bright that they blind me, and so I can't see the road if there's cars around. Oh, wow, that would be terrible. Damn. Otherwise, it's much better at night if there are no lights pointed at me or street lights. So like, is it like a thing where you have better night vision, but if there's a huge contrast of light, that's not good. That's one thing that annoys me about the nighttime. If I'm like ever out at night or whatever, I almost prefer that there was less light in a way, or that the lighting was somehow more even, I guess. Like all these artificial lights and whatnot kind of mess with my eyes a little bit. I mean, I can see perfectly well, but it's like I almost prefer it was slightly darker, more evenly lit, I guess. This live stream is proudly sponsored by Mountain Dew. Mountain Dew, do the dew. There you go. No, not sponsored. I wish it was sponsored. It's like, hey, Mountain Dew, I've been drinking your shit for years. You should sponsor me. You know, I'll drink your drink on stream and say, hey, this is in fact sponsored. I could use the money anyway. Anyone that wasn't the norm or who rebelled was considered to be a witch or possessed, especially any woman that expressed free thinking or spoke without her husband's permission. Yeah, I know. It's like such BS. Yeah, like I would hate to have lived back during those times. I mean, I'm sorry, but I can't imagine that. Um, anyway, I hate to interrupt this briefly, but drinking all this water and tea before that, I have to use the bathroom, so I'll be right back. I apologize for the interruption, but I'll be fast, and then we'll dive back. We'll continue to dive into more werewolf information. So, one moment, please. Okay, I'm back. Let us continue to engage in the exploration of werewolf myths and legends and everything else associated with it. All right, let's see. Where were we? Okay, I think this is where we were. Because lycanthropy was seen as a curse, werewolves were often thought of as victims as much as villains. The transformation from man to wolf was said to be torturous. Recall such scenes in the film An American Werewolf in London, and many sought cures for real and imagined symptoms. Quote, traditionally, there are three principal ways in which a werewolf can be scourged of his demons, writes Ian Woodward in The Werewolf Delusion. He may be cured medicinally and surgically. He may be exorcised, and the most drastic, he may be shot with a special bullet. End quote. typically a silver bullet. When the medicinal and surgical cures were attempted, they involved lots of bloodletting, vomiting, and vinegar drinking. In fact, Woodward notes, quote, so severe, so brutal were the cures advocated by early medical practitioners that, not surprisingly, a great many werewolfic patients died by the hands of those who promised them salvation, end quote. Damn. Wait, I'm reading the comments. I'm too much of an independent thinker myself to have survived in those times unless I was somehow able to hide from society successfully while I worked on my research and inventions. Yeah, that's relatable. I know what you mean. With my medical history growing up, the only time in history I could have survived as well now. Yeah, it's interesting how modern medicine has changed things, isn't it? Who knows if I would even be surviving very well without it. I don't exactly have the best health in this life. At least the US won't let disabled people starve to death, I guess. Yeah, that's a whole nother topic, but it's like, yeah, at least they don't want us to die. And people like me can actually work and earn a bit of a living. Give him weed, problem solved. The stone werewolf just wants to cuddle. Jeez. Yeah, I have no idea if I would have fit in those terms either, hundreds of years ago or whatever. If I could have worked and earned a living, I don't know. This is like, I'm someone who is all about being in the shadows, apparently. But anyway. While werewolves are the best known shapeshifters, they are not the only were animals said to exist around the world. Others include were foxes, were dogs, were tigers, were snakes, were hares, were bears, and even were crocodiles. Of course, wait a second, I have to comment on this. That reminds me of video game I played as a kid called Quest 64, in which there was an enemy that literally was titled Were Hare. It was this rabbit looking thing. So funny to me. Of course, wolves are more threatening than dogs and foxes. There's a reason why most werewolf films are scary, and Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit was a comedy. Like vampires, werewolves have been around for millennia, and nothing short of a silver bullet is likely to stop it from being around millennia more. Yes, it is true. Were-duck. I know, it's like, is there, where's the were-duck? Is that a thing? But anyway, that's it for that article. Let's see what else we can burn and observe. Were-cow. Were-rabbit movie is wonderful. Maybe I should watch it. Oh, that's right. Speaking of movies, we were going to look very briefly. I'll just take a minute or two at the Underworld Blu-ray description. Let's see, how should I pull that up on here? One moment. If you are not interested in Blu-ray movies in the way that I am, I suggest using this moment to go grab a drink or something of some delicious liquid. And by drink, I don't necessarily mean an alcoholic beverage either. If it's alcoholic, make sure that you are of legal age for such consumption. All right, here we go. Searching it now. Come on. Okay, here we go. Apparently this doesn't have the information we're looking for. Okay, here we go. Well, looks to be a pretty damn good movie with a video score of 4.8 out of 5, an audio score of 5 out of 5, coming in at an MPEG 4 AVC video codec, DTS HD Master Audio 7.1 soundtrack, and a movie score of just 3, but I think it's much more than a 3. But anyway, let's see here. This doesn't want to display very well on here. One moment. All right. So again, this is just a little fun departure from the subject of the stream. If you're looking for information on werewolves specifically, they'll resume in a moment, but we're looking at Underworld Awakening for a minute or two. Underworld Awakening features a picture-perfect 1080p video presentation. The film carries over the same attributes from previous series entries. It's primarily black and blue, with little in the way of vibrant coloring away from Celine's bright blue eyes. Red blood intermixes occasionally, but otherwise the palette is largely limited to that cold, inhospitable, demoralizing, hopeless dual tone. The image is actually quite shiny, with light reflecting off of wet pavement and Celine's glossy black leathery outfit, which sort of adds a bright offset to the blue and black scheme. Black levels, no surprise, are rich and deep, and flesh tones are ghostly and washed out by design. The transfer produces fantastic clarity, natural depth, and visual richness, even considering its limited color range. Fine detail is nothing short of extraordinary. Seams and fine lines on clothes, complex facial textures, and all of the little nuances around the frame appear naturally sharp and easily defined. Even the most insignificant details, like the evident texture of ribbed hoses or little scuffs on firearms, appear with such clarity that audiences will almost feel as if inside the movie. Sony's transfer suffers from an insignificant trace of banding, but is otherwise free of any unwanted visual accompaniments. This is a fine, very well done transfer that shows Blu-ray at its best. How nice. And now for the audio quality. Underworld Awakening sounds fantastic. Sony's DTS HD Master Audio 7.1 lossless soundtrack ranks amongst the very best the format has to offer. This one impresses from the opening seconds on through to the closing credits. This presentation defines the modern cinema audio experience. It's big, aggressive, potent, and exceptionally immersive. Though it's loud and deep, clarity remains perfect throughout. Surround use is constant, heavy, and involved. The audience feels as if a part of every scene, immersed into every environment, caught in the middle of every battle. The track provides a non-stop barrage of perfectly balanced surround sound activity, whether mood and location-critical light ambience, the pressurized sensation of underwater sound effects, music playing harmoniously with the rear channels, or high-powered action. The track proves to be one of the most immersive around, and for all the activity it offers, never does the track play as anything but perfectly balanced and absolutely lifelike. Gunfire erupts from each and every corner of the listening area. It tears through the stage as bullets zip and casings clank off the floor. Metal and flesh impacts, likewise, may be heard everywhere, and listeners might be inclined to duck for cover. The track also defines its locations with precision. A seaside port features seagulls maneuvering about, the steady sound of gently rolling waters, and boat horns in the distance. Musical balance is faultless, and instrument clarity is unbeatable. Dialogue is consistently strong and focused, playing firmly up the middle and never once sounding the least bit shallow or lost under the heavy effects and music. This track makes fine use of all of its attributes. The added surround channels help to create one of the most seamless and exciting soundtracks to date. This disc is worth a purchase, if only as a top-notch audio demonstration piece. And that, my dear viewers, is why that Blu-ray is currently on its way to me right now, because I rented it years ago, and damn, is it good. Can hardly wait. And that's also why, might I add, that we should, fucking keep physical media alive, in my opinion. You're not going to get that kind of high quality on Netflix. I can tell you that for damn sure right now. Maybe in like a number of decades, maybe that'll become a thing, but not yet. Not yet. Let's see. Go grab a Mountain Dew. Yeah. Have you ever read the nonfiction book Raising the Dead? If not, you should. I think that you would enjoy it. Oh, really? I have not read that. I should have to check that, or I shall have to check that out at some point. I mean, there's so much stuff I want to read. It might be hard for me to squeeze it in, but I can try to look into it. My favorite Underworld movie was Rise of the Lycans, and my son's name happens to be Lucian. Oh, really? That's very cool. Yeah, that's the only one I happen to actually own on Blu-ray, by the way. Yeah, that's a really good one too, which also has very excellent video and audio. And the plot is sort of different from the other Underworld movies, but I like that about it. It has a more, I don't know, subtle perhaps presentation. I don't know. But anyway, what else was I going to say about that? I don't remember, but now I've got this one on the way. Much Leather. Sounds like I need to see this movie. I recommend it. Still collects cassettes, DVDs, and CDs. Oh, really? Just yesterday, I bought Skrillex's first 2 EPs on CD. Yeah, there you go. I don't know. I mean, yes, I'm putting on lip balm again. You can call me old school, I guess, if you want, or whatever. Or like a cranky old man. But he was almost 30. But I'm sorry. Physical media will never die for me. And I really hope it's kept alive, specifically with Blu-rays, specifically with movies. Like, that's very, very, very important to me. And I know it's very important to a lot of other people out there too. I know these days the popular thing to do is stream everything, but I'm sorry, that's not going to cut it with me. Unless or until streaming something becomes a 100% replica of the Blu-ray, it's no deal for me. Like, I'll still stream things, but if I want to truly enjoy a movie, I'm getting the freaking Blu-ray. I don't care what it costs. So that's my position on that. I'm also a little bit disturbed, to be honest. Here comes my Capricorn side coming out again, but at how all of these streaming services seem to be destroying small businesses that are catered towards movie rentals. And so one of the things that I intend to do, I've done this a little bit, but I intend to do it more, is continue physically renting movies to help keep those businesses alive. There's a great place right here in the town that I live in fact, that I like to go to rent Blu-rays. And people could argue, oh, there's not a market for it. Well, I argue that there is, because there's people like me who want the highest of quality. I mean, if it's out there to be experienced, I want to experience it when it comes to movie quality. But anyway, let's continue with our theme of werewolves now, or go back to that. Britannica.com. What do we have here? Problem with all these digital experiences, especially with DLC, is it's not future proof. Yeah, that's another point. best friend vouches very heavily for Blu-ray. Yeah, for good reason. I mean, if you care about video and audio quality, then it's well worth it. What the hell's going on with this thing right now? Oh, here we go. I don't know. Like, I don't want to go on a big rant about this on a stream about werewolves, but think about it. Those who make movies, everything from like the director to the actors and the music composers and all this stuff, they work their asses off to bring you that hour and a half, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, whatever happens to be, piece of film. Okay. They work their asses off all for you to have this delightful, like 2 hour or so experience. And for me personally, I want to sort of honor that by doing my utmost best to watch a movie with the highest video and audio quality possible, or as not even that so much as close to what the director and everyone who made the movie intended it to be experienced as. That's my issue. Now, I understand, of course, not everyone can do that. Not everyone, like if you're living like, especially like in an apartment or something, it's going to be hard to get like surround sound and all that kind of stuff. I totally understand that. I'm poor as fuck myself. Like the system that I have now, it took me forever to save up for. And in fact, the TV I have is still an ancient as fuck TV from 2005, which I don't know how it still works and looks as good as it does, even though it's from 2005, but thank the gods it does. I get that. I'm just saying that, like, for those who have the means and those who really care about it like I do, it's well worth it to invest in the highest quality possible. So I'm sorry. I know some people are going to be like, how the fuck does this even matter that much? Well, it matters to me, if that means anything. So buy Fallout 3, better get the Game of the Year edition. I actually have that, by the way. And I have the physical copy. Otherwise, you miss half the content. Love your rants, though. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I guess for video games, it's maybe a little bit different in terms of physical media versus digital. I don't know. Like, ironically, I just downloaded, I purchased a digital copy of Halo 4 just literally the other night. So that's weird that this came up, which I was going to buy the physical copy, but then I thought about it and I thought, well, I can get it sooner if I download it. But see, with a video game, though, I feel like it's different because you're not actually losing anything in terms of video or audio quality. The only thing you're losing is the disc and the case that it comes in and anything that's included with that case, which is also valuable, but it's not the same thing as a movie. It is far from the same thing as a movie. Like, if you were to compare that to a movie, see, the reason that's not a comparison is because with a movie, for it to be the same thing, you'd have to like purchase that movie and download it and have like all the same level of video quality and audio quality in that actual download itself, if that makes sense. But anyway, let's see. TV is a 15-inch flat screen. Ah, nice. My TV is a 30-inch bulky as fuck tube TV from back in the day, but it's HD, which is weird. 1080 Ti. Sorry to do research to find the exact book. Raising the Dead by Daniel Cohen goes over real cases, came back from the dead, real life zombies, and possible vampire stories too. Oh, that's interesting. Damn, there's so many good books out there to read. It drives me crazy. Ain't the most impressive thing I love, but I love the high quality speakers it has. Oh, cool. Back to Werewolves class. Indeed. Like, I don't just have a Sun Saturn conjunction. I also have a Sun Neptune conjunction within about 3 degrees. So don't get me started talking on Neptunian things, including movies. Don't get me started talking on movies. I have some things to say about those. But no, back to werewolves, which are also strangely Neptunian things in the sense that they are supernatural and otherworldly. Isn't that fascinating? Let's see. Okay, so I guess this is the Encyclopedia Britannica. So let's see. Werewolf folklore, written by the editors of Encyclopedia Britannica, etc., etc. Werewolf in European folklore, a man who turns into a wolf at night and devours animals, people, or corpses, but returns to human form by day. Some werewolves change shape at will. Others, in whom the condition is hereditary or acquired by having been bitten by a werewolf, change shape involuntarily under the influence of a full moon. If he is wounded in wolf form, the wounds will show in his human form and may lead to his detection. Belief in werewolves is found throughout the world. The psychiatric condition in which a person believes he is a wolf is called lycanthropy. So wait, that's an actual psychiatric condition, huh? I don't know if I should even bring this up because I feel like it's perhaps a bit too controversial. But I guess I will anyway. I don't know if this is still a thing, but a number of years ago, there were a lot of people, particularly young people, who were basically, I guess, convinced that they were werewolves or like part werewolves. And I think others were convinced that they were vampires. Well, hell, for the vampire side of things, I literally used to be friends with people who were convinced they were vampires. I mean, Jesus Christ, the people I've had contact with over the years. But that's interesting that there's a literal psychiatric condition in which a person believes that they're a wolf called lycanthropy, because I think that became something of an epidemic a number of years ago. But I mean, hey, everyone, if you believe that you're a wolf, that is valid and should not be shamed. I own this Encyclopedia of the Unknown. I think it was published in the 1980s. My area always full of this stuff. Huh. Encyclopedia of the Unknown. Sounds like something I should get. I don't know if you already talked about this, but it was once believed that wolf's bane would weaken a werewolf or even cure the person of the curse. I think I've heard of that somewhere before, but I forget where. I thought that I was a vampire and werewolf starting back in 1995, but I grew out when I was about 23. Ah, I see. It's interesting, the things that we can explore when we're young as we sort of discover our own identity, I don't know. I'm trying to remember if I ever had any like crazy sort of wild thoughts like that. I'm not saying that's literally crazy, but did I ever have any? No, not really. Not that I can think of. I don't think I ever thought that I was like a supernatural creature, but I was friends with people who thought that they were, particularly vampires. And I'm talking people that I knew both in person and on the internet. I was friends with people who believed that they were like vampires or part vampires or whatever, which there's actually, I don't know, this is a whole nother topic, but there is like a medical condition apparently that causes people to have like vampire-like qualities to them. So that's a thing, I guess. But yeah, I was friends with some interesting people, which I haven't talked to any of them in a long time. I don't think. Of my current friend group, there's no one that believes that they're a vampire or a werewolf or anything like that, at least to my knowledge, unless they do and haven't told me. Now I realize that I'm just an alien JK, sort of. maybe many of us are aliens and just don't realize it. Who knows? I'm partially kidding, partially not. The thing that I guess the only other thing I'll say about that though is it almost seems like maybe people will go from one extreme to the other, which the other extreme is not good too. Let me explain, in my opinion anyway. Someone will go from exploring the idea, as wild and fantastic as it sounds, of being like part wolf or vampire or whatever, to then like growing up and going to the other extreme and sort of fitting in with the herd, so to speak, which in my view is actually a denial of one's individuality and exploration, very authentic exploration, might I add, of one's self and individuality and trying to find one's individuality. So I almost in a way, no, literally, I almost in a way would prefer to see the teenager who is trying to find themselves and who believes they're part wolf or vampire or whatever than I would the young adult who has sadly been coerced into conformity and has essentially, in my view, betrayed themselves. Like, I'd prefer the rebellious teenager over that, you know? And I'm not saying that we all should start exploring the idea of if we are part wolf or vampires. Like, I'm not saying that. Not saying that at all. I'm saying that we should authentically explore our individuality and not allow societal pressures to try to tell us that we aren't something when there just may very well be an aspect of us that is that very thing. So I hope that makes sense. Wear things like respirators, combat boots, steel-toed shoes, patches, spikes, etc. That's some good fashion right there. Let's see. Eyeshadow sometimes, but I wear glasses, so not always. I remember being very young and wearing a little bit of makeup at times. Clip-on fake tails. Yeah. Yeah, I remember seeing all that stuff. I think we actually have supernatural abilities, but limiting beliefs of society block that. Don't get me started on the government and media. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, from having studied spirituality and more specifically in recent years, past 3 years, things like astrology and tarot, I literally feel psychic these days. Like, I literally feel like I have this sense of sort of being tuned in and can almost tell when like something is happening or is going to happen or stuff like that. Not always, of course, but at times. So yeah, there's a lot that could be said about that. But anyway, where were we? Where were we? In countries in which wolves are not common, the monster may assume the form of another dangerous animal, such as the bear, tiger, or hyena. In French folklore, the werewolf is called loup-garou. France was particularly afflicted with reports of them in the 16th century, and there were many notable convictions and executions of loup-garous. As a subject for 20th century horror films, the werewolf tradition is second only to the vampire tradition in popularity. Werewolves are believed to turn into vampires after death. Wait, what the fuck? Believed where and by who? I've never heard that before. Werewolves are believed to turn into vampires after death. Is that a thing in some piece of fiction or something? That's... Where are they getting that information? I'd like to know. I've never heard of that. Put on color contact lenses, etc. Ooh, those always look so cool though. I've never worn them, but I thought about that earlier today, weirdly enough. I was fortunate to have a mother who believed in spirits, etc. She was aware that I could see them at birth, and she never tried to tell me ghosts aren't real or that they were in my imagination. Actually, I've heard that back when I was a teen and studied this stuff all the time. That is really fortunate. I think it's really bad, basically, when a parent, and of course, I'm sure they have the best of intentions, but when they try to reassure a child by telling them that it's just their imagination or monsters aren't real, etc., because what if they are real? And furthermore, technically, here's the real tea, I suppose, if you want to use that word, on the matter. Technically, when I look at that, I can't help but see that as the tiniest bit invalidating, because you're not actually trying to connect with the child's fear or concern or whatever. You're actually trying to make them feel a different way than they are feeling. Like, I don't know. If I was a parent, which I don't think that day's ever going to come, but if I was a parent, I would probably endeavor to, if my kid was ever afraid of anything, to completely validate that fear before I started saying anything like, you don't have to be afraid of that, et cetera, et cetera. I'd be like, that's understandable. I'd be like, if I saw that or felt that or whatever, I'd be afraid too, but that's a big subject. Ghost in the Darkness could almost be linked to Werewolves, kind of. Should look that up. Maybe it's on Blu-ray. Okay, let's look it up. Ghost in the Darkness. Actually, let's see if it's on Blu-ray. This thing will cooperate. Okay. Blu-ray.com. Let's go. If it is on Blu-ray, it's not showing up actually, unless. Hang on. Wait one moment. Ghost in the Darkness. Are you sure it's not Ghost and the Darkness? Because that's what keeps coming up. Let's see here. The Ghost and the Darkness, 1996, comes up, but I don't know if it's actually on Blu-ray. Or wait, yeah, it is. Well, there's a... Oh, here we go. Yeah, it's in both German and English. But it doesn't look like it has a review, but it looks like it's on Blu-ray. Pretty sure it could be Ghost and the Darkness. Okay. Set in 1898, this movie is based on the true story of two lions in Africa that killed 130 people over a 9-month period while a bridge engineer and an experienced old hunter tried to kill them. Oh, interesting. All right, I gotta activate my air conditioner because it's getting really warm in here at this point. Let's see. Why is my tablet doing that? My son came home from a sitter telling me about the boogeyman, and so we created a nightly routine where mommy would beat up the boogeyman under the bed so he could go to sleep. Aw, that's so cute. I didn't say that it wasn't a real thing, but I didn't want them to be afraid. I would rather my children believe that they can face their fears. Maybe that's wrong, but I don't regret those fun times. I think that sounds like a deliciously creative solution. Yeah, I mean, my whole philosophy, as perhaps some have seen from some of my other recent streams these days, is about validating, is all about validation, the importance of that. But it certainly doesn't sound like you invalidated your son. So yeah, I think that's great. It sounds like a very creative solution. So let's see here. Well, I think I might have to wrap things up here pretty soon because I'm getting rather tired and hungry. And I'd also like to squeeze in some Halo 4 before the end of the night. Yeah, we've been going for 2 hours and 15 minutes, and I think that's all I can handle, you guys. So thanks for being here and listening to me rant and rave at times and go off on weird tangents that don't have anything to do with werewolves and that some people will probably be mad at me for, but whatever. It's been a lot of fun. Just cut my finger 2 times cooking. Oh no, that is not good. Well, I hope you are all right. Also, thanks for the validation, Poetic. You are welcome. Validation is very important. Thanks, Mr. Poetic. You're welcome. All right, thanks, you guys. So have a great night. Thanks for being here again. I'm definitely going to do a Werewolves Part 2 at some point because this was very fascinating. And in the meantime, be wary of what may be lurking in the deep, dark night, especially in the thick woods, unexplored by human minds. Thanks again for watching. See you next time.